2, 3.
Hey, I'm Michelle Free, and this is Inside the Writer's Block.
She's damaged. Tubes tied because she kept having daddy's baby. The thoughts of suicide are now driving her crazy because she's damaged. She's tainted and feels that no one will want her. Nightmares and bad dreams sneak up and they haunt her. Sleeps with the guy because she felt she had no choice. Yells at the top of her lungs, but no one heard her voice because she's damaged. She walks around town with her head hanging low. Depression is the only emotion she will ever show. No education, school she never wanted to go.
I've been doing spoken word since I was 12 years old. I started off doing poems that I didn't write. One of my favorite authors was a lady named Roberta Faustin, and she wrote this poem called You Don't Live on My Street. And I used to say it all throughout middle school and all throughout high school. And then eventually somebody was like, Michelle, why don't you start doing your poems that you write? Don't you write? So I was like, okay. So I started doing my own stuff once I hit 18, graduated high school. That's when I started doing my own spoken word poems that I had written.
But instead, schooled on how to sniff coke up her nose because she's damaged. She's not the girl next door, no, she's the girl in the back alley. Broken glass around her head while her bruises she tallies. Her green eyes are now black, her skin has no glow, her pink lips are now busted. This is what happens when she says no because she's damaged.
What inspires you to write?
Life. Like I got a different style of spoken word because I like to tell the stories that may be hard for others to tell. So, I just kind of listen to what's going on in the world or things that people are going through. I'm an observer, so I just get inspired by things that people are going through, and I just try to. That's what inspires my poetry. That's what I write about, real life issues.
And no one will respect her. Begged to go home, but her mom wouldn't let her. You see, Santa Claus never got her Christmas letters. Cries herself to sleep wondering
spoken word, to me, spoken word has, I don't know, has more passion. I don't know. Spoken word is more about the delivery because you can go to like poetry readings and you have poets up there who have their book in their hand and they're reading it and just reciting their poetry. To me, that's reciting poetry. That's a poetry reading. Spoken word is more about the delivery, more about the passion behind it. So to me, that's the difference. It's all poetry, but as far as spoken word, that's more of how, that's just more of a performance. That's a different branch of poetry.
Strangers look at her and say just go to a shelter, but her pride's too high and her conscience won't let her. Remembering all the bad things that her parents would tell her, now she hides in abandoned buildings to stay out of bad weather because she's damaged.
Yeah, it'll be outside of my comfort zone to watch another artist or poet do my poetry because it's like I wrote it and I know how I want it to come across. I know how I want it to be said, but I do think it would be, pretty cool to listen to somebody else interpret my words, you know what I mean? But for the I don't know, that's different, but yeah.
She looks at the sky and lets the sun warm her face. Kids call her a mutt because she belongs to no particular race. Strangers look at her and say that she's just a disgrace. Gave up her hope for life because she feels that it's too late, but it's never too late. But she doesn't know that. She doesn't understand that God can lift her up from that. She doesn't understand that God can find her even when she can't find him. She can hand over her burdens and he'll take all of them. She doesn't understand that he can make a way where there is no way.
Like, what do you see like spoken word in the next 5 years?
I think spoken word about to take over. It's never gone anywhere. People just didn't want to acknowledge it. I think spoken word was really popular. It's had its phases. You know what I mean? With things like Brave Young Voices, or Brave New Voices, things like Deaf Poetry Jams, that was spoken word, you know, of the 2000s, early 2000s, also in the 90s. It kind of tapered off, but now you got things like Versus and Flow. You got artists like Kendrick Lamar. You got artists like Wale. I mean, it's coming more to the, you know, forefront. So I think in the next, what did you say, 5-10 years? Yeah, I think in the future, I mean, it's about to take over. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you heard spoken word on the radio with the beat in the background. Like, I feel like that's where it's going.
She doesn't understand that he can take all of her sins away. But what she does understand is that today she's damaged. She throws her hands up and says, okay, I'm damaged. She opens her legs up and says, it's okay because I'm damaged.
Once I get inspired, it's really not, you know, much of a process. It just comes out. You know what I mean? If I have to think about it and force it out, if I'm sitting there with a pen in my hand and I have to think about every line, then that means that it wasn't time for it to be born. You know what I mean? When I'm really inspired by something, there really is no process. There's just a pen and it just comes out. It was time. You know, I was inspired. That's it. You know. I like to say that I am a spoken word artist. I'm a poet that was inspired by hip hop. I'm definitely not a rapper. I'm not a musician, but a lot of my favorite poets are musicians. Biggie is a poet. Tupac is a poet. Erykah Badu, that's a poet. Lauryn Hill, she's a poet. And these were my biggest influences. You know, of course I listened to, read a whole lot of Maya Angelou, Langston Hughes, but my biggest inspirations, Jill Scott, she started off as a spoken word artist and then turned to music, you know, so my biggest influences are musicians like the ones I just named.
Yeah. And she'll never stand up until we tell her that she's not damaged.
Last question. How do you get over writer's block?
Sometimes I gotta force it. If I've just been stuck in a writer's block for too long, then I just gotta force myself to write, you know. And, you know, I may not use that poem, but it just gets the juices flowing, you know what I mean? So if it's just been too long since I done written anything, if it's been, you know, months since I've written anything, I gotta force something out. You know, I just start writing, and from there, you know, inspiration will hit me.
All right. So, there you have it. You know. All right, that's it.
All right. Thank you.